Yeah.
one has to come to the Madhyam Adhikar
Yeah.
by gaining Bhajan Nishta via uh, by performing intensified bhajan, by which significant anarthana vritti can be achieved. Without doing anarthana vritti, we can hardly expect to come or to go beyond the Prakrita Bhakti platform. Anarthana vritti is uh, is of four kinds. You can say, according to Madhurya Kadambini, Anarjuna Vritti is of four kinds which are alleviated in different degrees um, throughout the stages of progress in devotional life, from bhajan kriya all the way to Vasta Siddhi. Vastu Siddhi. Vastu Siddhi means the attainment of complete absolute perfection and shelter at the lotus feet of Krishna in the spiritual body.
Like in Bhavama
In the Bhoma Lilas, yeah. So, at, the stage of anarthana vritti, the idea of anarthana vritti can be seen in two ways. One, as a preliminary alleviation of gross anarthas, which is termed as the stage of anarthana vritti. Gross anarthas means, even then, wait a minute, we should back up.
Yeah.
Sorry. But anarthas arising from, there are anarthas arising from sin as well as piety. They are more or less taken as one variety of anartha, although they're categorized as two. Then there are anarthas arising from bhakti itself. Then there are anarthas arising from aparadam, which is divided into two categories, seva aparadam and nam aparada. So, seva aparad, anarthas arising from seva aparad, are not considered to be so serious because they can be easily eradicated by taking shelter of Nam, by worshipping Shalagram, by reciting scriptures and various stutis, etc. One can become relieved of the effects of seva aparad. But anarthas arising from Nam, they are only absolutely eradicated when one attains one's spiritual body. And the example there given is the cause of the gopis some of the gopis being locked in their room.
Yeah.
That they had not yet achieved Bhakti Suddhi. And therefore Yoga Maya, they did not achieve yet their...
They hadn't achieved Vashta Shuddhi, but they were in the Bhavama Lila.
They were in the Bhoma Lila in Sadak Deha.
Oh.
They did not have spiritual bodies yet.
Oh.
They had achieved Bhav Siddhi, means Sarup Siddhi, but they had not achieved Bhaskar Siddhi. And it was only when their Purvarag was sufficiently intensified by their being locked in their rooms, causing an increased desperation to meet Krishna, that the intensity of their bhav was augmented in such a way as to help them completely burn away any residual scraps of materiality in their consciousness, and which also dissolved their subtle bond to the material bodily conception of life. And because there's gross and subtle bonds to bodily conception of life. Yeah, false ego is the most subtle.
Yeah.
So that continues up to the nth degree of perfection. So it is not that at the stage of anarthana vritti, all these four varieties of anarthas are even completely, what to speak of, absolutely eradicated. one should refer
namely the 4 another Swansalan.
four kinds. There are four kinds of anarthas.
Arising out of seva.
Out of there's 5 if you want to look at it in that way. There's anarthas arising from sin, anartha arising from piety,
from seva,
from seva, from seva aparad, and from not from seva but from bhakti itself. Meaning, an example is given that anartha is arising from bhakti, because unless you're doing bhakti, you don't acquire this unwanted abhiman of wanting to be recognized as a great bhakta.
Yeah.
So it is only those who are performing bhakti who would want to be recognized as a great bhakta.
Yeah.
So that wanting to be recognized as a great bhakta is an example of an anartha which is arising out of the action of performing bhakti practices of devotional service. So
there's the third one.
Then there's seva aparad and nam aparad. So there's generally 3 categories. Anarthas arising from material activities. That means either sin or piety. So anarthas arising from sin or piety or material activities. Anarthas arising from bhakti, and anarthas arising from aparad. So that would constitute 3 basic forms of anarthas. So in any case, I mean, I would
point of like how we get past.
But I would have to look at the Damini in order to, because I don't remember the exact degrees of eradication at which stage.
So like only when all the anarthas are completely eradicated, we get out of the prakrita bhakta stage?
No, I'm saying when we say that there's 2 ways of looking at it. You can look at this adal shraddha, katha sadhu sangha, then bhajana kriya, anartha nivrityasya, then
nishtha,
nishta, ruchi, asakti,
and
involved in frame, right? So generally we have this idea that these are different stages of evolvement.
Yeah.
And you have to go through these stages.
Yeah.
You see? But there's another way of looking at it. From Shraddha develops a sense of the need for sadhu sangha. As Shraddha increases, so the sense of the need for sadhu sangha increases. And it's not that Shraddha is complete. Shraddha is not complete until one is absolutely convinced by experience. In other words, prema is the completion of Shraddha.
Yeah.
Shraddha or faith. Shraddha means faith.
Shraddha culminates in prema.
Culminates in prema. So when we say that Shraddha, that from Shraddha, the desire for sadhu sangha or the need for sadhu sangha arises. And as Shraddha and sadhu sangha become intensified, then bhajan kriya becomes manifest to a certain extent. It's not that bhajan kriya stops at the stage of bhajan kriya.
To the extent that you have Shraddha.
But to the extent that you have Shraddha, to that extent you'll actually avail of sadhu sangha. To that extent you'll actually implement the principles of bhajan kriya. To that extent, anarthas will arise, will be eradicated. To that extent, so because like in the beginning of bhajan kriya, you're going to be doing anishtata bhajan.
Yeah.
You're not going to be doing nishtata bhajan. So as your shraddha is gradually developing, as you go deeper in your sadhu sangha, as they reveal, let's say, more profound aspects of bhajan kriya as they or as you gradually apply the principles delineated by the sadhus,
Yeah.
In your life, then your bhajan kriya begins to become more profoundly, let's say, manifest and let's say, or intensified, and then your then anartana vritti is you can say that by the performance of bhajan kriya, anartana vritti is effected.
Yeah.
So as you perform bhajan kriya, in the beginning, the anarthas are affected in a limited way.
Means
Then
the
they-
anarthas arise in a limited way. Means in that particular level. Like if you are doing like whatever application you have done of the principles.
You already have anarthas from
Yeah.
arising from material activities. to
Yeah, but
start
now
with.
anarthas will
Yeah.
start arising out of bhakti and
That-
out
yeah,
of nam seva. And
Yeah, right. Because if you do aparad
Yeah.
in the course of your attempts to do bhajan or whatever, then those other kinds of anarthas, from anarthas arising from bhakti, anarthas arising from seva and namaparad, they begin to manifest to certain degrees. Not everyone is going to be fraught with the same, because maybe not everyone is doing the same type of offenses, for
Yeah.
example, because every individual is different. So anyway, by performing bhajan, to the degree that one is fixed up in bhajan, to the degree that one has attained ruchi in bhajan, to the degree that one has attained attachment for bhajan, asakti, to the degree that one has attained bhav, to the degree that one has attained prema,
in the bhajan kriya.
the anarthas are either limitedly eradicated, generally eradicated, completely eradicated, or absolutely eradicated. So the anarthas arising from sin and piety, because they're of a grosser nature, they are eradicated generally, limitedly, generally, completely, and absolutely much earlier on in the course of one's devotional progress.
That is finished. Like
Yeah.
those anarthas are finished.
Yeah. So, but the anarthas that are arising from bhakti and anarthas arising from namaparad, particularly, anarthas arising from bhakti, those are also limitedly, generally, and
Completely.
completely and absolutely eradicated at a little later stage.
Yeah.
But the anarthas arising from namaparad, they're generally, completely or absolutely eradicated, much later. In other words, it's described that the anarthas arising from namaparad are only completely eradicated at the stage of prema. They're generally eradicated. We can look at, Madhurya Kundam in order to see it, in detail. The point of all this discussion is that when because Vishwa, in Madhurya Kundam, there are different stages. In other words, bhajan kriya, anartana vritti, shraddha, the prema, they are, let's say, described as being different stages at which anarthas, so we can't throw out altogether the idea that these things are different stages, but at the same time, you have to understand that it's not only progressing vertically, but it's also progressing horizontally. There's greater and lesser degrees of absorption in bhajan. Generally it's understood that as you're progressing vertically, you're also progressing horizontally.
Yeah.
So that you get
We can make a table out of it.
you can do like that.
Like that all the different stages are interrelated. It's not only like progressive.
It's not that I've gone through the Shraddha stage,
Yeah.
and now I'm at this stage, so the Shraddha stage no longer exists.
Yeah.
No, the Shraddha stage continues. The Anartha and the Vritti, the bhajan stage continues. You're going to do bhajan, worship of Krishna, all the way, into Golok Vrindavan. You're going to still be doing bhajan, So it's not that the bhajan kriya or activities of worship stops at the stage of Anartha and Vritti or something. No, but bhajan kriya is the basis, from which Anartha and Vritti is affected, and similarly, by continuing to do bhajan, then anarthas continue to be. It's not that it's not that there is a stage of anartha nivritti, but that a stage of anartha nivritti doesn't mean that all of your anarthas are absolutely eradicated, because your anarthas continue to be eradicated throughout the stages of nista, ruti, asakti, bhava, and prema, all the way up to the point where you actually get your spiritual body in the Bhoma Leelas, when the spiritual body is fully manifest and you're actually there dancing with Krishna in the rasa dance or playing, because Krishna doesn't directly dance with those who don't have spiritual bodies. That's why they were locked in the room, because Krishna was not, Yogamaya knows that Krishna only dances with the spiritual bodies of the gopis. He's not going to dance with the material bodies of the gopis. So therefore, those who still had not yet progressed to the full-fledged manifestation of their spiritual bodies, they still had residues of materiality as a result of what? As a result of mainly the 10th offense. Maintain material attachments, even
complete faith in the chanting of holy name, to maintain
material attachments. This principle of maintaining material attachments even after understanding someone's, these gopis were still maintaining attachments to their patni dharma.
Oh.
Means they were maintaining attachments to varnashram considerations, and varnashram is considered to be more or less a material. Of course, varnashram transcendentally situated, in the spiritual world is not a material thing. But still, a material conception of varnashram, that, or any other, small traces of materiality. Actually, in Krishna book, there's or in the purports to the 10th canto, there's some description of the gopis not being completely freed from the residues of their reactions to sukarmas and vikarmas, which means, piety and sinful life. But that I have a little trouble with that personally.
That's why Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, right? Which commentary?
I don't know which commentary it was. It might have been that. But
you're speaking of Prabhupada's commentary.
I'm not sure, but I can't remember. But that idea was given in one of the purports. We'd have to look at it closely again, just to analyze its let's say influence in this discussion. But if you look at Vishwanath's commentaries, in his those activities, bhajan kriya, is followed by an arjunavritti, or the clearing of bad qualities and obstruct the progress of bhakti. Anarthas may be classified into four types according to origin: those arising from previous sinful activities, those arising from previous pious activities, those arising from offenses against devotional service, and those arising from imperfectly performed bhakti. It's not arising from bhakti, but it's arising from...
that's what my doubt was,
Yeah. But anyway, they arise from our attempt to perform bhakti. Anarthas, or obstructions to bhakti arising from sinful activities, are the 5 types of klesha previously mentioned ignorance, false ego. In other words, how he's going to tell what are these different anarthas. Anarthas rising from offenses specifically from nama-aparadha, seva-aparadha, offenses of deity as entering the temple and shoe are in themselves not a direct cause of anarthas, for seva-aparadha do not usually have effect on the real devotee, because by constant service, by chanting the holy names, and by the citation of specific verses that have the power to cancel the effects, I already mentioned it. However, if one is careless, thinking that he can take advantage of for protection afforded by the above measures, his seva aparadha will become nama aparadha, the anarthas that will obstruct his progress. He is guilty of the nama aparadha, committing sin on the strength of the holy name, etc. The word nama in the phrase nama aparadha refers not only to the holy name, but to all angas of bhakti, of which the name is the primary representative. Even according to the Dharma Shastra, revealed scriptures dealing with the cause of karma, if one willfully commits sin on the strength of prayaschitta, then the effect of the sin will not be destroyed, but rather increase. So that here, let's go further.
Was it out of enthusiasm?
Now, he says one may not commit offenses out of enthusiasm. On the other hand, if one takes advantage of the scripture and guarantees the permanent effect of even a little devotional service, simply chanting the Krishna mantra once, for instance, and the result willfully omits some of the, if he does not commit, in other words, if he doesn't perform certain angas of devotional service, he's saying that this does not refer to a willful omission of a secondary anga of bhakti. For unlike the path of karma, where failure to perform a rite perfectly is condemned, on the path of bhakti there is no fear that failure to perform all the angas is offensive and will deprive one of results. Mm-hmm. Are you understanding this point? It simply means that, for example, if one pursues the path of Rag Bhajan, he may not feel that certain aspects of what is considered to be useful in Vaidhi Bhakti to be relevant to his his pursuit of his desired bhav. So he may discard something like chanting the Purusha Shukta prayers, or worshipping the queens of Dwarka, or whatever, which may be relevant in the performance of Vaidhi Bhakti. But what he's saying here is there's no offense, committed to bhakti by doing that. In other words, it's not a seva aparadha. He says, if the nama aparadhas, whether long-standing or recent, have been committed unconsciously, but their presence is indicated by the result, that means the lack of advancement, the only recourse is to chant the name constantly. By that, steadiness in bhakti will be attained and offenses will be neutralized. If nama aparadha is committed in full knowledge, then the following points must be taken into account. And now he goes into the whole thing about what is nama aparadha and lists the 10 offenses against the holy name. Now then, let's see. Then there's anarthas. Then he gets into nullification of the anarthas. Here's the part we want. Yeah. He says the 4 types of anarthas mentioned, namely those arising from previous sinful activities, from previous pious activities, from nama aparadha, and from cultivation of bhakti, have 5 grades of eradication. Limited means it's limited to one anartha. Pervasive, affecting many anarthas. General, complete, and absolute. So limited, pervasive, general, complete, and absolute. Anarthas arising from nama aparadha are removed in the following stages. One should understand that the word nullification, nivritti, applies not only to the complete absence of anarthas, but to any of the progressive stages of nullification as well. You understand? Nivritti doesn't just mean that everything, that when we say the stage of an anartha nivritti, it doesn't mean that anarthas are completely eradicated or absolutely eradicated. It means that they're eradicated in degrees. Let's say, are removed in the following stages. One should understand that the word nullification, nivritti, applies not only to the complete absence of anarthas, but to any of the progressive stages of nullification as well. Thus, with performance of devotional activities, bhajan kriya, there is nullification, but the eradication is limited. So, at the stage of bhajan kriya, with the appearance of nishtha, the eradication is pervasive. With the appearance of rati or bhava, the eradication is general. With the appearance of prema, the eradication is complete. With the attainment of the Lord's lotus feet, the eradication is absolute. In other words, in Vomalilas of Krishna. That means Vastu Siddhi. Vastu means the attainment of reality, of one's real absolute relationship, constitutional relationship with Krishna. Okay, the eradication of anarthas arising from previous sin is as follows. With the performance of bhajan kriya, the eradication is general. See, whereas in the performance of bhajan kriya in relationship to anarthas arising from namaparad, the eradication is limited. Then there's limited, pervasive, then general. But here, with the performance of bhajan kriya, the eradication is general.
This is quicker, right?
Huh?
This is quicker than namaparad. Right?
Yeah. Eradication is general. With the appearance of nishtha, eradication is complete. And with the appearance of asakti, it is absolute. In other words, you're absolutely free from all anarthas arising from sin, which means the tendency to commit sinful activities at the stage of asakti.
It's all the kutambism and everything.
By the stage of asakti. So we can, in order to see what is entailed, we can go back and take a look at what constitutes the anarthas arising from sinful life. And then eradication of anarthas arising from bhakti is as follows. With the performance of bhajan kriya, eradication is limited. Just like
that is the stage of anartha nivritti, fourth stage. That's what they say. Like after bhajan kriya, the anartha nivritti, that age to be limited.
No, during bhajan kriya, it's limited, and with the appearance of nishtha, it is complete. With the appearance of ruchi, it is absolute. So even though even though the anarthas arising from sin seems to start in a better way, because of bhajan kriya, the eradication is general, whereas anarthas arising from bhakti, bhajan kriya eradication is limited.
Yeah.
But still, the anarthas arising from bhakti become absolutely eradicated at an earlier stage, at the stage of ruchi, whereas...
no, it's a later stage.
No, ruchi.
Ruchi is later than nishtha.
No, it's saying here. And here...
that is asakti. Okay.
Asakti is beyond ruchi. It's absolute. See?
Yeah.
And nishtha is complete, and with the appearance of sakti, it's absolute. But here, the anarthas arising from bhakti, with the appearance of ruchi, it is absolute.
Okay.
The wise men should conclude in this way after considering all matters thoroughly. One may raise the objection that these stages of extinguishing anarthas do not apply to devotees, quoting such verses. Anyway, if one hears the holy name one time, chanda listening to attain liberation in the material world, this is all true. One should have no doubt that the holy name has such inestimable power, but because the holy name is unhappy with offenses committed against it, it does not manifest its complete power in the offender. This is indeed the reason why the sinful tendencies continue their existence. But though these tendencies continue for some time, the servants of death have no power to attack such a person. Anyway, but so the question is about
how to
how to overcome the Kanishta Adhikar.
Prakita Bhakta stage.
Well,
Prakita Bhakta means Kanishta Adhikari, right?
Kanishta Adhikar, generally though, is in as long as one is on the Anishtata, there are two platforms of bhajan kriya, or bhajan, the performance of devotional activities. That is Anishtata bhajan kriya and Nishtata bhajan kriya. Anishtata bhajan kriya is characterized by, according to Madhurya Kadambini, Anishtata bhajan kriya is characterized by, what was it? Well, what was it? What was it? Here. It's characterized by utsahamai, false confidence, which means that you become enthusiastic at one point, but then you flip-flop. Then unsteady performances of devotional, sporadic endeavors, that is Ganatarala, indecision, Yudha Vikalpa, struggle with Maya, Vishaya Sangara, inability to uphold vows, Niyamakshama, and unsteady and enjoying the waves, Tarangarangini. Each one characterizes unsteadiness in devotional service. So as long as one is unsteady in devotional service, or anishtata in one's bhajan, one is considered to be in the Kanishta Adhikar. At the stage of Nishta, when one's bhajan is Nishtata, then from that stage commences the Madhyam Adhikar. So Prakrita Bhakta generally refers to those in the Kanishta Adhikar. There are three stages of Kanishta Adhikar, namely Kanishta Kanishta, Kanishta Madhyam, and Kanishta Uttam. The Kanishta Uttam means that they have considerably eradicated anarthas arising from sin and piety. Even those who are and are therefore candidates for being promoted to the Madhyam Adhikara via Nishtata Bhajan. In other words, by coming to the Anartha Nivritti stage, at which stage one's anarthas arising from sin are almost completely eradicated. What does that mean? It means Srinvatam Swakata Krishna, Punyashravana Kirtana, Kyanantakshro Hyabadrani, Vidanoti Suritsutam. It means that the Hyabadrani are almost completely eradicated. Nasta Prayeshu Abhadreshu, Nitya Bhagavata Sevya.
Means almost eradicated. Nasta Prayeshu Bhadreshu Abhadra.
Yeah. So Nityam Bhagavata Sevya, Bhagavati Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki. One comes to the Nishta platform. Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki. So those who are whose anarthas arising from sinful life are almost completely eradicated. They're candidates by their intensified performance of bhajan kriya. They quickly come to the Nishta platform and become Madhyamadhikaris, at which stage their anarthas arising from sin are completely eradicated. So
what corresponds to their vision of seeing everyone?
Sin and piety, both. Because it describes this in relationship to sin, but piety is just the other side of the coin of sin, basically.
And what corresponds to their vision of seeing all the spiritual personality to some material point of view, like one who's in the Kanishta platform? Like these 6 things are mentioned, like false confidence and all this
Well, this
What is corresponding to their tendency to see everyone from material point of view and spiritual personality?
this Tarangarangini
Yeah.
means that they are enjoying the waves. In other words, they see things related to bhakti as material opportunities.
Yeah, I know that. And even spiritual personalities as a means to attain their material objectives, right?
Objective, yes. In terms of power, position,
Yeah.
prestige in the society of devotees and these things.
So that's why we start respecting those people more than those who don't have power, position, and all.
Here's a short. Just as a pupil entering school may think he has already become a great scholar worthy of everyone's praise, a person just beginning devotional service can display the audacity to think that he has mastered everything. He is called utsamhami, or puffed up with enthusiasm. Ganatarala. Pupil may be diligently engaged in his studies, and yet, as at other times, because of inability to understand the subject matter and because of a lack of real taste, becomes totally negligent. In the same way, a new devotee sometimes practices the different activities of devotional service nicely and sometimes neglects them. Sometimes assiduous and at other times negligent. His sporadic endeavor is called Ganatarala. Condensed, dilute, thick and thin. Let's say, Vyuta Vikalpa. Shall I become a householder, happy in family life, making my wife and children Krishna conscious and worshiping the Lord? Or should I give all that up and go and sit in a place of meditation in Vrindavan and become a real success by engaging full-time in hearing and chanting with no distractions? Shall I wait until the last stage after enjoying all sorts of pleasures when I will have understood that the whole material world is simply a forest fire of affliction? Or shall I renounce right now? Should I regard this family life as death, a deep well concealed by grass, and give up this unreliable so-called shelter while young? Or shall I wait until the death of my old parents before renouncing? If I give up family life immaturely, I will think of family life after renouncing. Oh no. If I should die in that condition, I will go to hell. From that type of renunciation, I won't get any strength. Therefore, for the time being, I will just work to keep my body alive, and later, after satisfying all my desires, I will enter Vrindavan and worship the Lord in full dedication. After all, renunciation is useless if one depends on it to produce bhakti, but then again, it is acceptable if one knows it is generated from bhakti and is dependent on bhakti. By sophism, one may justify immediate renunciation of householder life, in the confidence that there will be no worry for food, since it is well known that the sadhus in the ashrams eat plentifully. Thus, the neophyte sometimes contemplates a life of renunciation. But at other times, applying the maxim that household life is distressful only for those who are attached, he favors household life being supremely aloof. Shall I engage in chanting, or perhaps in hearing? Or shall I engage in service? Let me rather engage in many angas of bhakti, like Ambarish Maharaj. When one speculates on all types of options in devotional service without deciding anything, it is called Vyuta Vikalpa, extensive indecision. One whose heart is lodged in materialism, this is Vishaya Sangra. This may be a little bit insightful here. One whose heart is lodged in materialism is far from obtaining devotion to Vishnu. Can a man who moves east expect to claim something that has moved in the opposite direction? The devotee, knowing he cannot attain steadiness in serving Krishna, while attached to material enjoyment, resolves to renounce his addictions, but while attempting to renounce, he may end up indulging in it, taking solace from the example of the devotees given in the Bhagavatam. The inexperienced devotee, in spite of his attempt to give up his material desires, is unable to do so completely and is allowed to indulge in satisfying his desires to some degree. This is a quote from the Bhagavatam. This ongoing battle with his previous acquired desires for sense pleasure, in which he is sometimes victorious and sometimes defeated, is called Vishaya Sangra, or war with sense pleasure. Then there's Niyama Akshama. The devotee may then resolve, from today I will chant such and such number of rounds of japa. I will pay so much obeisances, and I will render services to the devotees. I will not talk on any subject except the Lord, and I will give up all association with people who talk on material matters. Although he makes such resolutions every day, he is always unable to execute them. This is called Niyama Aksama, or inability to follow rules. Vishaya Sangra is the inability to give up material activities, whereas Niyama Akshama is the inability to improve his devotional activities.
Sanandara meaning?
Well, we already read that.
The meaning you.
It is well established. It is well established that people become attracted to. We already read this. To persons possessing bhakti due to bhakti's auspiciousness, and as the popular saying goes, by attracting the populace, one becomes wealthy. Bhakti produces such opportunity for material gain, ownership, and position. These are weeds around the creeper of bhakti. Engaging oneself in pleasure-seeking ranga amidst these weed-like facilities, which are but small waves, taranga, in the ocean of bhakti, is called taranga rangani, delighting in material opportunities. So in other words, if a materialistic devotee is one who thinks that the material opportunities that are gained, that when one gains material opportunities in the course of engaging in devotional service, that this is indicative of one's advancement. Because he sees that the material opportunities, are the let's say,
In the guise of spiritual life.
he sees that the material opportunities which are externally visible to him are the symptom of one's advancement in devotional life.
Yeah.
So that is the vision of a prakrita bhakta, or a materially or externally oriented devotee, because he is not able to see the internal fiber or the internal substance of an individual's devotional advancement, but rather he sees that he sees the external, let's say, material opportunities that come in the course of devotional service, thinking that these are the symptoms of one's advancement, not understanding that they're weeds surrounding the creeper of devotion.
Oh, yeah, that's a nice plan.
Now, if one has, in other words, he's not recognizing the actual creeper of devotion. It's described in Chaitanya Charitamrita that one has to be very careful, not to mistake the weeds to be the actual creeper, and water the weeds instead of watering the creeper. So if one is not, let's say, sufficiently conversant with Bhakti Tattva, then one may not be able to distinguish between the weed and the creeper, and thereby one thinks that the weed is the creeper and waters the weed, or in other words, pursues material opportunities or whatever in devotional service in the course of one's engagement in devotional service, instead of focusing on the actual sarup, of Uttama Bhakti. I don't know whether that did it or not. What was the question?
Yeah, this
What was the
actual thing was like about Prakrita Bhaktas, how their tendency to sue
how to
everyone.
overcome the Prakriti
how
Bhakti
to overcome the
platform.
Prakrita Bhakta platform.
Yeah, so
Now, if you want,
is to intensify one's absorption in bhajan so that one can surpass the stage of anartana vritti and come to the nishta platform. Whereupon the madhyam adhikar commences.
okay. And the intensified bhajan you divide into two parts, like one is japa and one is
Well, the bhajan kriya, there are different nine processes of devotional service, of which the kirtan is considered to be complete. Kirtan is of different varieties. There's Bhagavad Kirtan, there's Nam Kirtan, but Nam Kirtan is considered to be the best among them. Even amongst Bhagavad Kirtan and Guna Rupa Lila Kirtan, etc. But Nam Kirtan is considered to be the most efficacious
in this age,
and therefore the most important in this age.
Yeah.
And of Nam Kirtan, there's different types of Nam Kirtan. There's Nam Kirtan, and then there's Sangha Kirtan, Nam Sangha Kirtan. Now, there can be one person chanting loudly, and then there can be many people chanting congregationally, and that is considered to be even more powerful than or more efficacious than Kirtan. And then there's Maha Nam Sankirtan, which means that there's hundreds and thousands of devotees chanting and dancing in one place. And that is considered to be the supreme anga of devotional service. So the more one takes the opportunity to engage in Maha Harinam Sankirtan, the better the chances of him expediting his progress to the stage of Nishta, Ruchi, Asakti, Bhav, and Prema. Because it's described in Chaitanya Charitamrita that it is by Nam Sankirtan that Prema is achieved in Kali Yuga by Nam Sankirtan.
Yeah, I read that quote somewhere. Even Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj writes in one purport of Chaitanya Bhagavat, where Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is telling one Tapan
Mishra, yes.
Yeah, he's telling, he told him the means of getting relieved. So in one verse is simply like, chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Rama Rama, Rama Hare. That is one verse in Chaitanya Bhagavat.
Yeah.
And in that purport, Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj writes that those who are averse to the loud congregational chanting of the holy name, like they, something like, they attain hellish condition. And he said, this is the only way of getting the love of God by loudly chanting congregationally chanting loudly the holy name.
Yeah.
Loud.
Yeah. That's supported in many places.
Yeah.
So
thank you for that.
So the only remedy to all the problems of life is to recognize the necessity of taking shelter of the Yuga Dharma.
Yeah.
In a viable way.
What does that mean?
Viable means in a real way.
Getting in the action.
Actually getting it done. Yeah. Actually doing it.
Yeah. Not just like doing the activities that are supporting it, and the main thing is missing.
Yeah. Or by only. The idea is this: that when you have when you are in a disease, the Prakriti Bhakta stage is a disease condition because you're still contaminated by material concepts, material vision. You haven't come to the platform of gaining penetrating insight into the actual substance of bhakti. So that is the disease. The disease, of jaundice or avidya, is predominant in the Prakriti Bhakta.
Yeah.
So
how to get?
So we have to cure the disease. We have to overcome the disease. The recommendation that is given by Rupa Goswami is that if one is diseased by the jaundice of avidya, then the only solution to the problem is to take the medicine. And therefore, one should take the medicine of Harinam. See, by even though the name of Krishna is sweet, it tastes bitter to those who are and because it tastes bitter, there's a reluctance to engage in the chanting of the holy name.
Yeah.
Because it tastes bitter, and no one prefers the bitter taste, to the sweet taste. So if something tastes bitter, and you're thinking that, oh, I want something sweet, but that very thing which is sweet is tasting bitter, therefore, my tendency is to neglect or to reject that activity of chanting the holy name. But the medicine may be bitter, but one has to take the medicine. And actually the medicine is sweet. It's just that your taste buds are conditioned, or let's say in a disease condition.
Yeah.
So in this way, we have to understand that it's not that if you have jaundice, Prabhupada gives the example of rock candy.
Yeah.
By eating rock candy, you can become cured of jaundice. But if you have jaundice and you eat only 1 gram of rock candy, every 10 days, you're not going to get freed from jaundice. Wow. You can say, well, I ate rock candy, but you ate rock candy only once every 10 days. So how are you going to, or once a week? So similarly, if your jaundice condition is, because there's different degrees of jaundice condition. Some have jaundice, slightly. Some have jaundice, horrendously. Mm-hmm. So if someone is very sick, then not only does he have to take a lot of rock candy, but he has to take a lot of rock candy a lot of times. Mm-hmm. Not just that, okay, it's just like, I get another example, extension of the same example, is that, for example, if you have pneumonia or bronchitis, so then you have to take some ampicillin or azithromycin or something. Ampicillin requires, if it's not a very bad case, and if you have not had it many times before, in other words, if you're not as deeply entrenched or conditioned, in other words, if it's not a chronic problem, then you may be able to take 2 times a day, 500 milligrams, but 500 or you may be able to take 2 times a day, 250 milligrams. And that may suffice to knock out the disease, because it's not a chronic disease. But if it is a chronic disease, and if it's a very advanced, case of the disease, acute case of the disease, then you may have to take, the 500 milligrams 3 times a day instead of 250 milligrams twice a day. So, but, it would be foolish if one thought that, well, the doctor prescribed ampicillin, so I'll take ampicillin 200 milligrams once a week, 250 milligrams once a week, and then wonder why you're not getting well. It's because there has to be sufficient dosage, and there has to be proper frequency of application of sufficient dosage.
Along with the regulation also.
Huh?
Along with the restricted.
The proper diet and proper, in other words, you have to know that if you're sick, you have to abstain from certain things, and at the same time, there are, recommended edibles, and there, in other words, there are do's, there are don'ts, and at the same time, there's the medicine, and the medicine is the chanting of the holy name. Yeah. And those who are more sick have to increase their chanting of the holy name. It's only an intelligent thing to understand, that if you're more sick, then you should increase your hearing and chanting of the holy name, the pastimes of Krishna, etc. And if you're, but who's to say who's more sick or less sick? You should understand that you're more sick. Yeah. And if you're a Prakrita Bhakta, still, on the Anishtata platform of bhajan, then immediately you should understand that you're more sick. You're not less sick, So And as long as you haven't got your spiritual body, you should understand it, your most.
Yeah.
Because the anarthas, we just explained how the anarthas go all the way up to the point where you get your spiritual body. And the more subtle the anarthas, the more difficult it is to eradicate them. That's why they last so long and are all the way up to into the Bhoma Leelas. Because they're more difficult to eradicate, which means the more need there is to intensify your bhajan. The reason why the gopis couldn't go to Ras Leela was because they didn't have their spiritual body. Why? Because their bhajan wasn't sufficiently intensified. So therefore, there's a need to intensify, increase the dosage. So therefore, we see that the acharyas recommend that although you may start out with, 1 round or 2 rounds, you increase it to 4 rounds, you increase it to 8 rounds, you increase it to 16 rounds. Don't stop there. 16 rounds is the minimum.
Yeah.
According to Bhaktivedanta Thakur in Chaitanya Shikshamrita, he says the Madhyamadikaris chant a minimum of 3 lakhs of Nam daily. Minimum of 3 lakhs, and increase the number to the point where they're chanting incessantly, because only by constant chanting of the holy name can one become freed from the reactions to anarthas, reactions to namaparad, which means one become freed from namaparad, or from the anarthas arising from namaparad. Your reactions to namaparad are the anarthas arising from namaparad. So, that's the only recommended process by which one can become completely freed from all anarthas, is to come to the platform of constant chanting. And you don't come to the platform of constant chanting by not increasing your Nam Japa and increasing your Nam Sankirtan. If Prabhupada said minimum 16 rounds on your beads and hundreds of rounds off the beads, but who's chanting hundreds of rounds off the beads, please?
Yeah.
Hardly anyone in the course of their other daily services or whatever they may be having, because they have no taste. Why is it that Prabhupada was straining his brain? He said it himself why he's straining his brain to find so many other service engagements for us to do. It's because we don't have taste for chanting the holy name. That's why. We don't even have the minimal taste for chanting our 16 rounds hardly. But how do you get taste? How do you expect to get taste, for something that you hardly do?
Yeah.
So the recommended process is to increase your Nam Bhajan. Why only 16 rounds? Chant 32 rounds. Chant 64 rounds. Or 1 lakh is 58 rounds in truth. Chant, 116 rounds. It's 2 lakhs.
150.
Chant,
174.
174 is 3 lakhs. Chant more. There are devotees in Braja to this day, even now, who are chanting 5 to 7 lakhs daily.
Yeah, I told me.
Constantly chanting.
It must be taking them whole day.
All day? But I say that it's better to chant 1 or 2 lakhs and do, at least 3 or 4 hours of Nam Sankirtan, or 6 hours of Nam Sankirtan. 1 lakh and 6 hours of Nam Sankirtan. You can even do 2 lakhs and 6 hours of Sankirtan, if you're, fully absorbed, concentrating. 6 hours of your Nam Japa, or 7 hours of Nam Japa. 2 lakhs is between 7 and 7.5 hours, if you're chanting nicely. And so you sleep, if you sleep 6 hours a day, and you're chanting Nam Japa, 7 hours a day, that's 13 hours. That means there's another 11 hours to do something with.
Do Nam Kirtan for how many?
If you do Nam Kirtan, for say 6 hours.
19 hours. You still have 5 hours.
You still have 5 hours for eating and passing stool. And maybe by the time you're able to do that, somebody else will be willing to wash your clothes for you. Turungarungani. Then you can ride. Then you maybe can pat yourself on the back that you deserve to ride on the waves of material opportunities.
Yeah.
And then you won't want to ride on the waves of material opportunities. You won't be interested in accepting other people's services.
Yeah.
But what's the difficulty? 1 lakh, chanting 1 lakh and doing 10 hours Sankirtan Yajna for the satisfaction of Lord Chaitanya.
No.
If you want prema, you want prema. If you don't want prema, then don't do these things. Stay on the Prakrita Bhakta platform with your Anishita Nam Bhajan. Can't even chant your 16 rounds daily. You know, what is this nonsense? And thinking you're making progress. Yeah, you'll make progress, gradual progress, as gradual as you want to make it, after 700 lifetimes of realizing that you should increase your, finally realizing you'll get enough piety by doing it that way, you know, to finally come to the position, you know, of having enough intelligence to realize that you should be increasing your Nam Bhajan. Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Eva, Kevalam. Eva means certainly, Kevalam, only, exclusively in this Kali Yuga. There's no other way. Nasteva, Nasteva, Nasteva. There's no other way than Nam. What is this nonsense? People thinking that there's some other way than Nam? It means that they haven't understood the very basic instruction of Mahaprabhu. Param Vijayate Sri Krishna Sankirtan refers to Nam Sankirtan. That's why in the next verse he says, Nam, Nam, Akari. He's talking about Nam.
Yeah.
But unfortunate as I am, I have no taste for chanting these holy names, even though you've made it easy to approach your holy names. Why? Because avidya. Avidya means ignorance, lack of knowledge, because you don't know what you're doing. Therefore, you think that there's so many other things to do besides Nam. But those who are actually intent on prema dharma, who are actually very serious about ascending to the terrace of prema in this lifetime, they take shelter of Nam. And they take shelter of Nam in a big and qualified way. Qualified way means not just that you're meticulously hearing the syllables of the name. Qualified way means that in a big way, they take shelter of Nam, and by the grace of Nam, within their heart awakens a perception of their natural inclination toward a particular bhav. So then they start seeing Nam as the name of their lover. They start seeing Nam, Krishna Nam, as the name of their son, or their darling son, you know, who happens to be the son of Mother Yashoda and Nanda Maharaj. They start seeing name as the name of their bosom buddy, their best friend. Or they start seeing the name as the name of their
master,
you know, very, very, very famous and handsome master, the Prince of Braja, the son of Nanda Maharaj. You know, so that is qualified chanting. Qualified chanting means to chant either, if not with bhav, that is real qualified chanting, but at least in pursuit of a particular bhav, recognizing that that is your nija abhishta bhav, your swabhishta bhav, your inherently desirable.
Even a vague concept would do.
Goal of, or objective.
Even a vague concept would do. Like I'm chanting, and just even I'm attracted to this. You know, the Manjari's mood of Salit. So like I don't know exactly the details.
Yeah,
you know, but at least I have it in mind.
You can. It starts with vague and becomes more clear.
Yeah.
More
with your reading and
specified.
With your reading also, right?
Huh?
By the reading of
by reading of the scriptures, and gradually, as you purify your heart, because it is described by Vishwanath in Ragbharat Chandrika, it is described that there's three ways in which knowledge of Krishna and his eternal associates is revealed to the disciple. One way is through one's Diksha Guru. The other way is through an advanced Raganuga Bhakta. Another way, the third way, is that when one is purified by engaging in devotional service, primarily Nam Sankirtan, when one's heart is purified, then from within, Chaita Guru reveals the things to the disciple. So it is not that one is at a loss if it so happens that his Guru has not revealed every detail. If the Guru is present, and if the Guru is willing and capable of revealing everything to the disciple, then well and good, the disciple may be fortunate enough to gain everything during the physical presence of his Guru, But if the guru's demise, happens before the disciple receives every detail, then as Prabhupada himself said, that the guru will instruct his disciples through dreams, which generally means that it's the Chaitya Guru assuming the form of one's revered spiritual authority, and giving the instructions by dream or even by a natural inspiration.
So it's like the same idea I was telling you that day about how devotees think that they perform devotional service throughout their life. At the time of death, it's revealed. So they're just missing the point that the chanting is one of the this central aspect of all our devotional efforts. But they are missing that point, and they're doing all other activities, and they're thinking the same way that the Chaitya Guru or spiritual master reveals everything at the time of it, that you don't have to endeavor.
Whatever, but who's to say it has to be at the time of death? Nonsense.
Then it's like something like that.
It's not supposed to be at the time of death.
Like
Practically at the time of death, it's too late.
Yeah.
Because if the idea is if you don't see it in your sadhana, you can hardly expect to see it in your sadhya. It's not that suddenly you out of the blue, alakazam and you have prema.
Yeah.
It's by assiduously absorbing yourself in bhajan kriya, intensifying your bhajan. The gopis, the sages of Dandakaranya who took birth as gopis, many or most of them did not attain prema until after they had entered the Bhoma Leela of Krishna. They had maybe bhav, but they hadn't attained prema. And they had, in order for them to attain prema, they had to intensify their bhajan. Some of them intensified their bhajan and attained prema and were able to go directly to the rasa dance the first time around, whereas others had not intensified the prema, and Yogamaya made arrangements by locking them in the rooms via the influence of the superiors or the husbands or whatever. The husbands, acted as, the emblems of their lack of intense bhajan. Or you can say that the husbands were the symbolic representations of their anarthas. They were still not free from anarthas. So the husbands posed as their impediments to their attainment of their final goal.